Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun. Dave is still out with a sinus infection, so it'll just be me. We got Jimmy Hyams coming on the show in a minute to talk a lot of stuff. We got a lot of things to get to today. We have got Tennessee basketball's bracketology. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I'm going to ask some questions ahead of the Ole Miss matchup with Jimmy that might be intriguing. The ACC settlement, also talked about that yesterday, but we're going to add a little bit more to it because now we have numbers and what it means for the SEC. NFL Combine Vols, give some comments on Nico Iamaleava. That's a little bit intriguing. The new college football playoff committee is out, and Tennessee baseball is out here setting records, delivering an encore from their national championship performance. Again, welcome to the show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We are live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. And let's go ahead and bring him in, Jimmy Hyams. How are you, Jimmy?
Caleb, I'm doing great. I hope you are as well.
Doing great as well. Jimmy, want to go ahead and dive right into it, actually, with today's tough question. And it actually involves Tennessee basketball, because the bracketology numbers are out ahead of their final games of the season. And while it seems like they would have a clear path to a 1 seed, only two bracketologists, Jerry Palm and Joe Lenardi, had them as a 1 seed, but the net rankings have them at number 5. And I believe Fox Sports has them as a 2 seed. So just up front, out of the blue, or off the top, do you think right now they'd be a 1 seed or a 2 seed in the tournament?
Right now, I think that'd be a 1 seed. Now, there's also this thought process as well. Is the NCAA selection committee going to have 3 SEC teams in the top 4? Or 3 SEC teams going to get a 1 seed? That's certainly debatable. Duke and Houston have something to say about it. But right now, when I look at it, I think there's a pretty good case that Auburn's going to get a 1 seed, even though they lost to Texas A&M last night. And Tennessee, by virtue of its win over Alabama, by virtue of its 20-point win over Florida in the most recent contest, and by virtue of 8 wins over ranked opponents, I think Tennessee would get the 2 seed right now. Now, they got to win out to keep it. The number 1 seed. They got to win out to keep it. But I do think that they would get a 1 seed at this moment.
So you bring up it's funny you brought up their win over Alabama in the Florida game. Obviously, Alabama and Florida play this week. Jimmy, my concern for Tennessee, and I brought this up yesterday, and then I want to dive into the actual question that might be a little bit debatable, but my concern for Tennessee is that we know the selection committee, based on recent history, has just thrown out the conference tournaments and not valued them at all with how they've seeded people unless you win. We also know they've relied heavily, primarily on the net rankings, but then the BPI right after that, and to a much lesser degree, the RPI, not as much as they used to. The reason I bring all that up is Tennessee already is behind Alabama in the net rankings at number 5, meaning Alabama would be the 4th number 1 seed if they just went by the net rankings. I think it's almost a certainty that the winner of Alabama-Florida will stay ahead of Tennessee in the net rankings to the end of the regular season, since Florida's number 6 behind Tennessee. I want to know your thoughts on that.
So you're saying that Alabama-Florida, that winner will move ahead of Tennessee?
Yes, in almost all the computer rankings that they do, I think it's a certainty.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. Now, how much is that committee going to rely on the net ranking? Are they going to look and say, which I don't know if they will or not, but are they going to look and say, hey, Tennessee without 2 starters beat Florida by 20? That's the most recent game that they played. And in the only head-to-head matchup against Alabama, they beat Alabama. So regardless of what the net rankings say, you can make an argument that Tennessee should be ranked ahead of both Florida and Alabama. Will the committee look at it that way? My gosh, I don't know. Committees have done some strange things in the past, as I think everybody would acknowledge. But I do think in this case that Tennessee, if it wins out, and I'm talking about the regular season, I think it would stay ahead. Not necessarily the net rankings, but I think as far as the selection committee, I think Tennessee would get the nod over Alabama and Florida.
All right, so let's ask the debatable question then, which is this. Based on the bracketologist yesterday, if Tennessee is a number 1 seed, they'll in all likelihood be the last number 1 seed. Even with Auburn losing, you're right, Auburn will stay ahead. I don't foresee Duke or Houston losing either their final regular season games, and I don't even think Duke would be punished that much if they lost at North Carolina over the weekend. So with that in mind, if they're the last number 4 seed, they're going to be in the West region and playing in San Francisco during the second weekend. I think given what we know now, and this was my hot take 2 weeks ago, and I want to know your thoughts. If I'm Tennessee at that point, I'd rather be the 2 seed in the Midwest or South regions where I know my fans are going to travel and I know I'll have home court advantage that next weekend against anybody I play, rather than being the 1 seed out in San Francisco where I'd be on a different time zone and I could effectively be playing road games depending on who the 2 and 3 seed are.
That makes sense. And I also know that Rick Barnes as a 2 seed has done very well in the tournament. He's been a 2 seed, according to what I saw the other day, 5 times. He's made a Final Four, 3 Elite Eights, and a Sweet 16 as a 2 seed. So 2 seeds, he's done well in that slot. And I look here's my thinking on that too. It would be nice to be the number 1 seed because you've never been the 1 seed, right? That would be a first for your program. There would be bragging rights. But at the end of the day, it matters more what you do in the tournament than where you're seated, right?
Totally agree.
Yeah, I don't really think it makes a whole lot of difference whether you're a 1 or a 2. Now, you don't want to drop behind a 2, I don't think. But I for the logistics, for the geography that you mentioned, Tennessee might be better suited to be a 2 seed instead of a 1.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you what you'd rather do if you're a Tennessee fan. First, again, the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win. Why settle? Banks and Jones, led by tscottjones.com.
Why Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott.
All right, Jimmy, if you're Tennessee, if you're Rick Barnes, if you're the players, would you rather the 1 seed in Atlanta or Indianapolis or the 2 seed in the 1 seed in San Francisco or the 2 seed in Atlanta or Indianapolis?
I'd rather the 2 seed in Atlanta or Indianapolis. I would prefer that. And as far as the opponent, there's not a whole lot of difference in playing the 16 seed or the 15 seed, right?
Exactly.
I mean, neither one of them are any good. If you don't win that game, shame on you. And I don't want to hear, oh, that's a tough matchup. No, you're playing a 15 or 16 seed, you ought to win. And then beyond that, who knows what's going to happen. And I have a thought on this, and I know that most people disagree, but I've heard people say it's all about matchups. I don't think it's all about matchups. I think it's about matchups, but also about how you play. You can play a team where you have a better matchup and shoot 30%, you lose. You can play a team that you say, boy, that's a tough matchup, but you shoot 50% and you win. So I think it's just as much about how you play as it is about the matchup that you face.
You know, it's funny you say that, Jimmy. I totally agree. And it's one of I usually don't like berating of media members at all. I never liked it with Nick Saban, but there's an old YouTube clip of Bobby Knight back in the 80s when someone said to him one time, it kind of amazes me how you guys could beat Northwestern by 50 at home and need overtime to beat them on the road. And Bobby Knight was like, it amazes you don't know basketball because basketball's full of that kind of thing. Whereas you have a team that plays a little bit better one day, one team plays a little bit worse, and you get a gigantic difference on the margins when that happens.
Well, look at Tennessee and Florida this year.
Yeah. You
go on the road and lose by 30 and you shoot terribly. And then at home without Ziegler and Milicic, you win by 20. So, it just depends a lot on how you play. And I've heard people say, well, it just depends on how the shots fall or whether the shots fall. Here's a little bit of my concern about that comment. That implies that defense doesn't matter. If shots fall, shots don't fall. No, defense has something to do with that, right? So,
very true.
I mean, there's a reason Tennessee's defense is number 1 or has been number 1 in the nation in 3-point defense and one of the best defensive teams in the country on defensive efficiency. And only one team all year has outscored its average in playing against Tennessee. So it's not as simple as, well, the shots fall or they don't. Defense has something to do with that.
Right. And also defense and, as you were bringing up from the offensive side, shot selection. I mean,
yes.
it's, a lot of times whether or not the shot falls depends on whether or not players were taking right shots. I mean, there's so many other factors that go into it. I totally agree. Do you think, now let's ask this, because some of the people on the other side will say, because you and I are on the same, I'd rather be the 2 seed in Indy or Atlanta. First, I guess the other region is Newark. So would you rather be the 2 seed in Newark or the 1 seed in San Francisco? Because at that point, is Newark really that's not really directionally an advantage for Tennessee, is it?
I would take Newark just because you're on the same time zone.
Yeah.
There can be an adjustment when you go 3 time zones away to San Francisco. So, and by the way, Tennessee's had its fair share of success in New York, and New Jersey ain't too far from New York. So I think just geographically, time zone wise, it would be to Tennessee's benefit to play in New Jersey as opposed to San Francisco.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that part of that is part of that's the draw. Now, so, the other devil's advocate part is some people say that if you're in the South region, you'll be stuck with Auburn as the 1 seed. But I mean, Tennessee almost beat Auburn at Auburn a few weeks ago. So it's not like they can't beat Auburn in the right situation. Now, do you think, we both agree 15, 16 interchangeable, but do you think there becomes a big difference between like the 7th and the 8th seed or the 3 and the 4 seed? Is that where it could get tougher when as the tournament goes on?
Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, if you're a 3 or 4 seed, you're supposed to be better than a 7 or an 8. We have seen a ton of upsets, and we've seen some teams. The thing I wouldn't want to do, Caleb, and I would look at this, I don't want to play a team that gets really hot and seems to have found itself in February, leading into March, leading into the conference tournament. I want to stay away from that. I may have the year wrong, but I think it was 2011 when Connecticut was not going to make the NCAA tournament, and then they won 5 games in the Big East tournament, and then they won 6 games in the NCAA tournament, won the national championship. They got on a roll. And I look at some teams right now, like to me, one of the most dangerous teams in the country right now, and I know they're going to be a 1 seed, it's Houston. Look at how well Houston's playing. Duke is playing great right now. I wouldn't want to fool with them. I look at a team like Clemson. I think Clemson's really good. But I look at some teams that get hot late in the year. And maybe it's because they've had an injured player that's returned. Maybe it's because their chemistry has found itself. Maybe it's because people have identified their roles. But whatever it is, I think there's some really good teams out there that don't get a favorable seeding, but they get hot in February and in March, and they're very confident. I mean, look at the team that a few years ago where Tennessee under Conzo Martin ended up, they played in Dayton, right? And they made the extent, they were playing well late in the year. So, those are the teams that scare me as much as the quote tough matchups.
That was the Conzo Martin story, though, wasn't it? They always started out slow in January, and then February would come, and they got hot. The problem was for the first of the 2 of the first 3 years, they had the January was so bad they couldn't overcome it to get to the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I agree. Getting hot at the right time is a huge part of this tournament. It's kind of not as bad as the baseball tournament, but I mean, I would you say March Madness? It's one of the more gimmicky ways to crown a champion, isn't it? Because of that.
Well, yeah, because you've got 68 teams that have. Well, let me rephrase that. You don't have 68 teams with a chance. You got probably 30 teams with a chance, I would say, maybe 25. So there are a bunch of them. I mean, the 15 or 16 seed, they may pull an upset, but they have no chance. You're giving a lot of automatic bids to conference champions that have no chance to win the NCAA tournament. They may have a chance to advance some, but they're not going to win it. So when you pare it down, you can get to who gets hot at the right time. And I mean, look how many times the NCAA tournament championship is won by a team that was not a 1 seed. It could have been a 3 seed. It could have been a 4 seed. Was NC State a 6 seed back in 1983? Something like that.
I'm not sure, actually.
They weren't, and they had to win in overtime, I think, against Pepperdine in their first game of the tournament before they got rolling. So you can win it if you're anywhere between a 1 or a 6 seed. History has proven that. But just because you're 1 seed, I mean, it's rare. It's rare that 3 1 seeds make it to the Final Four. And I don't think we've ever seen 4 1 seeds make it, right? I don't
One time. It was 2008.
2008. Okay.
Yeah, Memphis, Kansas, UNC, and UCLA were all 1 seeds, but that's the only time.
Yeah, so that's rare.
Right.
It's rare when that happens. So, I mean, if you're a 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, you have just about as good a chance to make the Final Four as if you're a 1 seed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. And I mean, at this point, the most important thing is getting in. So before we move on from this, I mean, we're in the last week of the season. I know you talk about getting hot, but Tennessee's they're not thin, but they're not necessarily the deepest team right now in basketball. Do you think Rick Barnes should maybe focus on trying to, rather than making sure he wins a tough road game at Ole Miss or goes far in the SEC tournament, should focus on making sure his players are fresh and well rested for the NCAA tournament more than anything else at this point?
I think so. But I'm also, and I think you were alluding to this, I'm a little bit concerned about Tennessee's bench right now. I mean, to me, Donnie Stone Dubar has been a big disappointment. I expected a whole lot more out of him. Cade Phillips is a better player than he was a year ago, but he has a propensity to pick up 2 quick fouls and go sit back on the bench. To me, the only guy coming off the bench that you can really rely on is Gainey, right?
Right.
So that's really thin. That's a really thin team. So if you get in foul trouble with your starter or a starter, I just don't think Tennessee's bench is that dependable. And I think that could be a concern in the NCAA tournament. In particular, this is just my opinion. Others may argue. Seems to me like in the NCAA tournament, they blow the whistle quicker. I don't think they let them play as much as they do sometimes in the regular season, and the officials take over. And if they start calling 40 fouls in the first half, Tennessee's in trouble because I don't think Tennessee's bench is that strong.
Yeah, I agree. But I've always said I'm the one grump who doesn't like March Madness the way everybody else does for 2 reasons. And you said one of them. I think the officials overblow the whistle. But because of the moment, I think everybody who's in the tournament, and just on a broad scale, give me your thoughts on this. I think everybody in the tournament tries to see it as their moment to become a star. And that includes the officials blowing the whistles. But it also includes, I think it's the most overcoached tournament in basketball. I mean, in sports. And what I mean is there seems to be a lot of extra coaching instead of letting guys play a lot of times by people on certain teams. What are your thoughts on that?
It almost reminds me of baseball teams in the playoffs where they start relief pitchers and then they'll throw a relief pitcher 2 innings and the next guy comes in for 2 innings. They totally get away with what they did in the regular season by just going with their rotation. So, yeah, I think there's some of that goes on. Here's the thing that'd be interesting, too, when you get an NCAA tournament time, and this doesn't just apply to Tennessee, but it could be applicable. So if your star player, let's say, Zakai Ziegler gets 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes, are you going to bench him?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And what Tennessee did the other day against Alabama, Ziegler gets 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes. They bench him, bring him back in the 7-minute mark. Then they take him out with about a minute and a half left in the first half. He ended up playing about 10 minutes in the first half. Would that be what Rick Barnes does in the NCAA tournament game? Or does he leave him on the bench to make sure he doesn't get that 3rd foul in the first half? The other part of that is Ziegler is such a veteran player that I think you can leave him on the court with 2 fouls, and he knows how to avoid getting a 3rd one. So there are just a lot of different ways to look at it, but I do think there is overcoaching in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I agree. What you bring about with baseball is great. What it reminds me of is on like Sunday night or Monday Night Football, you'll see an offensive coordinator get away from like on a 3rd and 1, just get the first down, and they'll try to call a creative play action, and you can tell it's like they're trying to dial up a play to get a head coaching job, and at the end of the year, it feels like. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chatmortgage.com. That's chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. Jimmy, I want to move on to some other news because, as I'm sure you saw, the ACC has settled with Florida State and Clemson. Now, I want to bring up the real big details of this for a minute because I talked about this yesterday, but before yesterday, the exit fee to leave the ACC was $120 million. But they also controlled all your media rights through 2036, which was the big deal. Now the exit fee is at $165 million, but it drops $18 million a year. And the exit fee is all you have to pay to keep your media rights intact. So how inevitable does this make it that the top teams are about to bolt the ACC for the SEC or Big Ten?
I think they're going to leave. I think that Florida State and Clemson are going to depart the ACC. Now, the ACC has, what, 17 teams right now?
18.
18? Okay, I thought they had an odd number. All right.
Well, technically Notre Dame's an affiliate, so I guess 17. You're right.
Stanford and California, that's really an interesting match with that. The thing that's intriguing about this is with Clemson and Florida State, the rich get richer. So would Clemson and Florida State look at this and say, no, wait a minute, we're succeeding. We're getting into the college football playoff. We're getting more viewerships. We're getting more money. We're in better position with more finances in our back pocket to win the ACC and get a college football playoff bid than butting our heads against the Big Ten and the SEC. Would they potentially look at it like that? That now they're better equipped to win their own conference, so why get into the meat grinder that is the SEC and the Big Ten?
So you think with this new brand initiative where they can take home more money based on ratings, they might actually see greater value in staying in the ACC?
Yes, I think that's possible. Mm-hmm.
I could see that. I took an opposite approach yesterday, and I want to know what you think about this. One of the underrated things, I don't know if you know this, but Georgia Tech was the highest rated ACC team in football last year. And SMU was number
viewership rating.
Viewership rating, yeah.
Okay.
SMU was number 3. The reason I bring that up is if this brand initiative were in place, Georgia Tech would have gotten the most money last year from the ACC of anybody. And are we so sure? Because Florida State and Clemson wanted this. They wanted the leverage to be able to leave if they wanted to. Are we so sure that by the time Florida State and Clemson want to leave, that they'll be the most desirable ACC team or ACC teams for the SEC or the Big Ten to poach?
I think that the answer to that is likely, but it's no guarantee, is it? Miami could certainly surpass both of them.
They could.
What's interesting is Miami's not won an ACC title yet. Now, they got a really good program right now, but they've not won the ACC. North Carolina hadn't won the ACC since 1980. It's been a minute. So I think it's possible that those two teams – well, here's the thing, too, about that. How long is Dabo Swinney going to coach at Clemson? How long does he want to hang around at Clemson? And Mike Norvell at Florida State, they went from undefeated and arguably should have been in the college football playoff to a miserable season. It started with the bowl game in which a lot of the players didn't play. So how quickly will Florida State bounce back from that? I don't know. I do have a question for you, and I don't know the answer. You mentioned Georgia Tech. I thought the success was not just viewership, but also success on the field. Is that not correct? As far as the money?
I do believe success on the field is part of it. I need to fully read the details. But isn't it like success on the field is part of an agreement to certain primetime games you're going to get? I could be wrong on that. And that's where the brand initiative comes into play.
I thought you got more money if you won the ACC, and I thought you got more money if you played for the ACC championship and if you got in the college football playoff.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right about that. Well, there's automatic, yeah, because you generate money for the conference with the college football playoff, so you probably get a percentage of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, the reason but, we talk about drawing viewership. Let's be honest. I think Bill Belichick in North Carolina, at least for a couple of years, is going to draw more ratings than Florida State or Clemson is, honestly, TV-wise.
That's a good point, as long as they're competitive. If they come out of the blocks and start getting beat 40-0, then people are going to – I don't think people will watch that. But if they're competitive, and if they're playing really well against the Clemsons and Miamis and the other teams in the league, kind of like Georgia Tech. You mentioned Georgia Tech with the viewership. Georgia Tech had a couple of big upsets, right, during the season. And I think they also – didn't they play Notre Dame?
Yes, I believe they did, yeah.
And that's going to get eyeballs on your game. Anybody that plays Notre Dame is going to get some eyeballs. So I think if North Carolina is competitive, people will be intrigued to watch what Belichick's doing. But he can't come out and go 3-9. I don't think he will now, don't get me wrong. But he can't come out and just have a miserable team because people might watch him early. And then I think I'm going to compare that a little bit, and I may be off base, and if I am, you correct me. I'm going to compare that a little bit to when Deion Sanders went to Colorado. When Colorado got off to that 3-0 start and they were upsetting people, man, you talk about high numbers. But then when they fell off the cliff, and I think they lost their last 6 games, I think their numbers declined greatly. So
Yes, they did.
Yeah, so I think the eyeballs on North Carolina will be tied not only to Belichick, but if he can be competitive.
So I want to bring up one more point, and then I want to play one little game with you on this ACC settlement before I let you out of here. But the other point is, if the deal goes down to like 71 million, the exit fee does 2031. That's the same year the Big Ten contract expires.
75 million.
75. Okay, yeah. That's the same year the Big Ten contract is going to be re-upped with the networks.
Yeah.
If the Big Ten and the SEC get into a fight to try to get some schools, I mean, I don't know where you land. I'm kind of bank on the fact that the Big Ten would win out for those schools, wouldn't they?
Well, based on the revenue that's produced, and if that's the reason that you're leaving, I would say yes. Yeah, I think so. Now, the footprint says you should go to the SEC. The footprint indicates that you would have more rivalry games in the SEC. I don't think that's what they're looking at. I think they're looking at bottom line and how much money can we bring in. What's also interesting about this, and I'm going to revisit quickly a point I was making earlier about Florida State and Clemson. You remember when the SEC expanded back in 1992, Bobby Bowden in Florida State didn't want any part of the SEC because he was dominating the ACC. And he's like, why go in there and butt heads against Alabama and Florida and Tennessee and all those other programs? So there is at least, and I know that's 30-some years ago, but there's at least some history of Florida State saying we're better off staying in the ACC than going to the SEC.
Yep. Part of that was bitterness too, though, because throughout the 60s and the 70s, Florida State was begging to join the SEC and never got an offer. And so it kind of went both ways. So I want to play a game. I want to just run through the ACC teams real quick. And let's say hypothetically the ACC implodes, and give me your prediction on where each team would go. Well, we would assume the Big Ten and the SEC get first dibs. If they don't want the team, the Big 12 might take them. So I'll go SEC, Big 10, Big 12, or they're just screwed. One of those options. So I'll start with Florida State since we're with them.
Well, I'm going to say it'll be more attractive for them to go to the Big Ten, and so I'm going to go Big Ten. Here's the other part of that too. Even in their own state, they got to compete with Florida and Miami for recruits, and so joining the SEC is not going to help their recruiting, is it? Maybe joining the Big Ten will. Something new, something different.
All right, I'm going to give you my thoughts on that, but first, Clemson, the two main ones. What about Clemson?
I'm going to say Big Ten for the same reason as Florida State. If you can make millions and millions of dollars more by going to the Big Ten, then I think that, and that's what this is all about, I think they'd go Big Ten.
Okay, so here's my hot take. I think they'll both go to the SEC because I don't think the Big Ten's going to want Florida State and Clemson because I think the Big Ten is still staying committed to their academic AAU member institution rule.
Okay, well, I thought I was addressing whether or not those schools wanted to go.
No, it's a prediction of where they'll end up, not where they'll want to go, but where they'll end up.
I thought it was where they wanted to go. I'm sorry.
No, it's where do you think they'll end up?
Okay,
that's the question.
Well, I'm gonna still stick to the snobby Big Ten academics.
Oh, okay. All right. So, what about Miami?
I'm gonna say SEC.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And they have the academics, right?
They do have the academics for the
Big Ten would want. But I'm going to say Miami, and I'm going to give you a silly reason because it contradicts what we're seeing out there right now. Travel. Miami's a whole lot closer to all these SEC schools. Now you can sit there and say, well, wait a minute, Southern Cal and UCLA are in the Big Ten, and they got to go play Rutgers and I get all that. Penn State, that's a lot of travel. But I think that's going to be a part of it. So I'm going to say Miami to the SEC.
All right, I'm going to move up to North. How about UNC? You think Big Ten or SEC will get them?
Big Ten.
Okay, I'm with you on North Carolina to the Big Ten. This first one we're in agreement with because I think Miami's going to go to the Big Ten, but I think North Carolina would go to the Big Ten too because of the academics. I also think, and I want to know your thoughts, I think that means Duke is going to go to the Big Ten too, and they certainly have the academics for that.
Yes.
Now, moving up, the two Virginia schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Virginia to the Big Ten, Virginia Tech, SEC.
Totally agree. I think we're in agreement on that. Are there any other schools that could get into the Big Ten or SEC, or are the rest of them just screwed? Not counting Notre Dame.
What about Syracuse? So I'd say Big Ten on Syracuse.
I think the Big Ten could theoretically go for Syracuse. That's a natural rivalry for Penn State if they do join. What about Boston College, sticking with the Northeast? Do you think they have any chance?
Was the third option screwed?
Yes.
Screwed.
Okay, so they're screwed. So the rest of them, Pittsburgh, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, SMU, Stanford, Cal. Are we going screwed for all those schools?
I think Pittsburgh has a chance to get in the Big Ten.
Really? Even though Penn State's that market's already there?
Yeah, I do. I think Pitt, because you have some natural rivalries there already, and they won the ACC just a few years ago, right?
They did with Kenny Pickett.
Yes, beat Tennessee that year too, as I recall.
They did.
But I'm going to go. I'm going to go. They've got enough tradition, I think, in football. They've been up and down now. I grant that, but I think they've got enough with their tradition that they would be a fit for the Big Ten. I think they go Big Ten.
Yeah, since Johnny Majors has been hired at Tennessee, Tennessee's record is 1-3 against Pitt all time. They lost twice to them in the 80s when Jackie Sherrill was there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Jimmy, how can we find your work?
Well, right here. And also, the thing that I'm doing that I enjoy a lot is we're doing these rewind segments. You can find it on Full Disclosure Productions. It's on YouTube. If you have any trouble tracking them down, you can go to YouTube and then search for my name. And I think we've done about 18 interviews. The most recent one is Zakai Ziegler. And Caleb, after we launched that one, we've had on Twitter or X, we've had well over 40,000 views on that alone. So, and Ziegler was really good. We'll run part 2 that'll be launched tomorrow. And then we will, we've got Jim Haslam interview, Mr. Jim Haslam. That interview is going to be launched after Zakai Ziegler. So you can find those on, again, Full Disclosure Productions. Go to YouTube. If you have trouble finding it, type in my name and those interviews will show up. So that's, but that's a project that I've enjoyed doing a lot. I love interviewing a lot of these folks, and it's been a lot of fun.
Jimmy, thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Caleb. You take care. Have a good day.
You too. That was Jimmy Hyams, guys. Portions of the program are brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's HOOKED, HOOKED, for 10% off. When we come back, some former Vols had some interesting comments on Nico Iamaleava at the NFL Combine. Is this just lip service, or is there some value to what was said, and should Tennessee fans be a little more excited? Stick with me. We're going to talk about that in 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win, why settle, Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. 2 minutes. We'll be right back.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln, Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's repair.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back to the program. This is Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Dave is out with a sinus infection. The show brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Dave and I would like to share something with you. Dave recently bought a Jeep. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. As Dave was in the buying process, I don't know if you guys know, he was a little picky. Initially wanted a Bronco, but he needed someone to walk him through the options. Andy and Nick White had him covered. Well, he decided just on what vehicle he wanted. He had no doubt, and you'll have no doubt, that you'll leave with a quality vehicle when you're at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive, because that's all they carry is quality vehicles. After one meeting, you'll leave knowing what you should expect for the vehicle or vehicles that you want. Now it's just a matter of making up your mind, and that's all it was for Dave, and that's all it'll be for you. And you won't believe this. Nick says if you don't hear from him soon enough, call a cell. That's what I call 5-star customer service with no pressure. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. If you want to stop at lot after lot and waste precious time, that's an option, but why? Ted Russell Ford Lincoln has perfected the buying process. As for my Bronco, as for Dave's Jeep, he got exactly what he wanted. And the good news is he had plenty of time to decide. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln knew that they'll have whatever vehicle he decides upon on their lot. After all, they're East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Whether it's partnering with local businesses or sending someone home in their first car, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln loves to be a part of special moments in East Tennessee. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln views it as an honor to serve their friends and neighbors. That's why they're so committed to providing exceptional customer service. There's nothing better than driving off in the car of your dreams, and Ted Russell Ford Lincoln believes it's a pleasure to help people do just that every day. Do yourself a favor. If you want a fantastic vehicle at a great price and a smile on your face as you drive off the lot, stop by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is the exclusive vehicle provider and studio sponsor of Off the Hook Sports. All right, let's play a little hot or cold, guys. I got a column about this up right now on the web. You can read it. And it's based on what NFL Combine Vols said about Nico Iamaleava. Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton Jr., and Dylan Sampson were the 3 offensive players from Tennessee at the NFL Combine over the weekend. They all had a lot to say about the quarterback of the unit they played for this past year. Now, look, typically former players are going to tout players on the team they were just on. It's lip service. It's classy. It's the right thing to do. And if they didn't, there'd be some serious drama that you would think is going on. However, the stuff Brew McCoy and the stuff Dante Thornton and the stuff Dylan Sampson said were oddly specific enough that a lot of it seems legit, and a lot of it seems to give you reason to believe in Nico Iamaleava taking a step forward for the future. So this hot or cold is going to be a little bit intriguing. I'm going to read a quote, and I'm going to tell you whether or not it's lip service or it has value. If it has value, I'm hot. If it's lip service, I'm cold. And we're going to start with Brew McCoy. Asked about Nico. Here's the first quote. Quote, I think his confidence, and by the way, you can read the article on these quotes. Patrick Brown of 247 Sports has the article on the quotes. I don't put the quotes in my column just on principle. He's the one who wrote it. So go to his site. I link it, and I just give my overall takes on it. So the first quote by Brew McCoy, quote, I think his confidence is just going to continue to grow and grow. As he gets older, and especially having Mike Matthews there too, he'll just continue to develop. He's getting bigger, stronger, faster. His arm strength's already there. And the more time you have in the offense, Coach Hype runs, the easier it is to do stuff. So I think you'll see a similar outcome to what Joe and Hinton were able to do. He's got a lot of good stuff ahead of him. Well, Joe didn't do a lot of great stuff, but there were other issues with the program at the time. But I'm going to say I'm hot on that quote. I think the quote is specific enough that he makes clear his belief in Nico Iamaleava. He specifically touted Mike Matthews. It seems like he believes that Mike Matthews is ready to take a giant step forward at receiver this year. Brew McCoy, with all due respect to him, we know couldn't open up the field for Nico the way he wanted to because he was coming back from his injury. And he just didn't have the step that was needed to dictate coverage. Mike Matthews with year development could. So I'm going to say out on that. That sounds exactly right. And Coach Heupel's offense does get easier to run as you get more experience with the system. He's speaking from a receiver's perspective. Now, Brew McCoy picked up the system quickly. He stepped in and filled in for Cedric Tillman immediately in 2022 after Tillman went down. But to be fair to that fact, McCoy was much more experienced than Mike Matthews or Nico Iamaleava was last year. But I'm hot on that. I don't think that's lip service. I think that is way too specific and positive. So I'm actually very hot on that. Now I'm going to go to Dante Thornton real quick. Quote, he was always prepared for big games, no matter what it was. A lot of people tried to tag that he was a freshman. It's his first starts, his first season starting in the SEC. But I feel like every game he came in with the mindset he was going to be the greatest he could be. And he showed a lot. And he showed that in a lot of those big games. All right, that's lip service. Nothing specific, nothing that really stands out about that. That's lip service. I think Dante Thornton, I'm not saying Dante Thornton doesn't believe in Iamaleava, but he was just saying stuff to be positive right there. That's lip service. That wasn't anything specific. So I'm actually cold on that. Moving on. Dylan Sampson. He just comes from a humble and strong foundation of family. I've seen him take steps over the course of the year, just in his leadership and his growth being a young quarterback. But man, he's poised, he's confident, he's humble, he's cool, he's calm, collected, man. He's going to take that team over. He's going to really do a good job of growing into the leader that everybody wants him to be. Now, that was the highlight quote of the whole story. He's going to take that team over and he's going to do a good job of growing into that leader. That would sound like I want to be hot on it, but I'm going to say cold. Lip service again. If you say he's going to grow into a leader, you're acknowledging he wasn't a leader last year. And how do you know he's going to grow into a leader? You're not on the program anymore. You're just kind of there at that point. So I'm a little cold on that. Now, McCoy came back and said and touted how physical and tough he is. And specifically, he goes, there's like this knock on him, the quote from McCoy, quote, there's like this knock on him, maybe that he's skinny and that he can't take hits. I don't know if you saw the Ohio State game, but he got his helmet cracked open. He just got a new helmet and we're right back out there. So the guy's extremely tough and he's a great leader too. That is absolutely, I'm hot on that. That's absolutely not lip service. That is totally McCoy touting his toughness. And he adds to that, Nico's a dog, man. That's very, very, so I'm absolutely hot on that. So playing all this, again, hot or cold is brought to you by City Heating and Air, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. I'm going to give you my overall take in 1 second.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your best. All right, final take on this. I'm hot on what Brew McCoy was saying about Nico Iamaleava. I'm cold on Dante Thornton and Dylan Sampson. Not to say that I think Dante Thornton and Dylan Sampson don't believe in Nico Iamaleava. I just think what they said was much more lip service. I think what Brew McCoy was saying was much more specific, and this follows Brew McCoy. Yesterday, we talked about him touting Deshaun Bishop as a star for Tennessee's offense. That really stood out to me. I really trust Brew McCoy on these thoughts. He has proven himself over time as a guy worth believing. So with that in mind, I 1000% believe in these comments. I think they are legitimate. And so I think don't take those lightly. Don't take those lightly. Brew McCoy is a very honest player, and he was one of the leaders of the team last year. So was Dylan Sampson, but Brew McCoy's been a leader for 2 or 3 years, and I think he was very specific. So with that in mind, the takeaway I have for this with what they're talking about is that I think Nico Iamaleava to Mike Matthews is going to be a deadly duo next year. I think Mike Matthews is going to be able to dictate coverage, and I think that's going to change the complexion of Tennessee's offense at receiver. I think that will make them better at wide receiver, honestly. And again, not to knock Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, but they both struggled with their health, and that ended up proving costly, specifically last year. So with that in mind, Brew McCoy, his comments were legit, and it should alleviate some concerns people had about Nico Iamaleava as far as how good is he, how many issues does he have, and things like that. If I'm Tennessee, I'm very encouraged by those comments. But just to go to the message board a little bit, David Speak says, I've never questioned his toughness and leadership, but I have had questions about his game indecisions and field awareness. Yeah, I have too, David. I'm not going to lie. But McCoy did insist that gets easier as you learn Josh Heupel's offense over time. And also if the receivers are able to do what they need to do, that helps. Derek Owen says, I don't believe in Mike Matthews. He's going to have to prove it. That's a fair point, Derek. But again, sometimes it takes receivers a bit of time to pick up the system. General Ursus says Bray would be a killer in this offense. Speaking of Tyler Bray, I mean, he would. Tyler Bray had the most beautiful deep ball, I think, in Tennessee football history, quite honestly. So I think Tyler Bray, physically, if he had intangibles, he would have been an NFL Pro Bowl quarterback. He just didn't. He had a special arm. And it's kind of a shame how it worked out, although he walked away with a lot of NFL money, so he probably doesn't care. His intangibles were that low. I've never really respected him that much because of his lack of intangibles, but at the same time, he wasn't in the best situation when he was at Tennessee. So there's that too. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. We're going to get to the stat of the day now. The stat of the day is brought to you by Joe Neuber Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neuber Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeuberCollision.com. That's JoeNeuberCollision.com. For those of you who don't know how to spell collision. The stat of the day is this. Tennessee basketball has now accumulated 8 wins against ranked teams in the AP Top 25 and 6 in the AP Top 15. The first one is a record. Tennessee's never beaten 8 Top 25 teams in a year in the AP poll. The second one, 6 AP Top 15 wins, ties a school record. This program has been playing in and winning more marquee games under Rick Barnes than they ever were before, and they deserve a ton of praise for that because what they've been doing is incredible. Speaking of Tennessee basketball and Tennessee football, the transition to it, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot at Josh Heupel right now. And, you guys might actually disagree with me on this, but I don't care. This is my opinion. And as Steve Harvey once said, therefore, it's the right one. I'm just kidding. But Josh Heupel made headlines over the weekend for being at the Tennessee-Alabama game. And he actually was getting the fans going a lot of times and seemed to call the shot with Jemai Meshack. I'm just going to show you this real quick. This is Josh Heupel at Tennessee's matchup with Alabama over the weekend. Just going to share the screen real quick. This is him firing the crowd up. Everybody's getting excited. There he Now, I'm going to be honest. Josh Heupel doing this, great for the fans, great for the excitement of everybody. Everybody loves seeing the sports support each other. Tony Vitello's commenting on the NCAA tournament right now. I'm going to give a hot take. I'm going to give a hot take, and I'm going to give one that might just hack all you guys off. But that's what I'm here for, because I like to have fun with you guys. I don't think Josh Heupel should be drawing attention to himself for supporting the basketball program this close to spring practice. There. I said it. I said it. Everybody likes seeing the coaches support each other. I'm not totally opposed to that. But Saturday was the last, this past weekend was the last weekend of the recruiting dead period, of the spring recruiting dead period. So it's not like there could be visitors on campus officially on Saturday for this game. So it's not like Josh Heupel was there for recruiting visitors. We're now in March as spring practice is about to begin. Recruiting reopened on Monday in the quiet period. Heupel should have been in his office doing all the research possible on prospects. That's what he's paid to do. When it comes to the football coach at a football school like Tennessee, I want my coach caring as little as possible about the other sports. You can go to a game here and there. Don't draw attention to yourself. Your job is not that. Your job is to deliver results. And if you guys think I'm crazy, you guys show me a time where Nick Saban wasn't just at an Alabama basketball game, but was at it close to spring practice and was hyping up the crowd and getting excited. Heck, Nick Saban was throwing shots at the Alabama basketball program with Nate Oates. What about Kirby Smart at Georgia? Was it happening? I don't think so. Football coaches, while it's exciting to see them care about the other programs, their job is to deliver results for the football program. I want them to be eating, living, and breathing football. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the poll question. Just real quick, the final one. Would you rather Tennessee be a 1 seed in San Francisco, 59%, now 60%, a 2 seed in Atlanta, 40%? Looks like I'm in the minority. I'm a 1 seed in San Francisco. I think I'll be in the minority on this one too. I think I'm going to have two poll questions where I'm in the minority today. But what are your thoughts on Josh Heupel cheering on Tennessee basketball? I'm going to say love it, 1 Tennessee, hate it, focus on football. And you guys give me your thoughts on that. I'm going to say hate it, focus on football. So I honestly think that the focus for Josh Heupel should be straight on football the whole time. Now, I want to address what a couple people say. So Pseudochamp says he was recruiting probably. If you want to make the case that getting himself out there on TV at a big game like that is helpful for recruiting, I can maybe listen to that. I'm worried it's a little more self-promotion to be liked than anything else. Steve Sullivan says if the coach can't take a few hours off, he's got big problems. Steve, it's the weekend before the recruiting quiet period opens, man. He needs to be focused on recruiting. There's questions about his recruiting. Now, I bring all this up to say this. I think when coaches draw attention to themselves for when they are coaching at a primary sport, and I mean something like football, and they draw attention to themselves for caring about other sports, it reminds me of the person at The Office. Have you ever seen the How I Met Your Mother episode where Barney makes it clear that the key, most important way to not get fired is to be the guy at the office that everybody likes and that everybody wants to keep around, even if he doesn't bring value. That's what it sometimes looks like when coaches are that supportive of other teams. They're trying to be the guy at the office that everybody likes, that hypes everybody up, that everybody's a fan of, so it's harder to fire him. Pseudo Sham says Kirby was at the Florida-Georgia game when Georgia won. Okay, Pseudo Sham, but one that was in February in the height of the recruiting dead period, not the weekend before the dead period ends, but also at the same time, I don't think Kirby was just drawing attention to himself. I think he was calmly at the game, and there's a difference. I know you guys think I'm crazy on this, but I think that when you're the coach of a football program at a football school, you should look like your only focus ever is on delivering results for the football program morning, day, and night. And everything you do should be about that. Now, I'm going to be hypocritical for a minute because nobody cheer-led Tennessee athletics more than Bruce Pearl. Nobody. And while Tennessee is a football school, basketball is a close second. Not a close second, but basketball is second, and they do love basketball. And Bruce Pearl got famous for heavily cheering and following the other programs. Bruce Pearl notably took his shirt off and painted his chest at the Lady Vols Duke game in 2007. Two things I want to bring up about this. Bruce Pearl inherited a basketball program that was down in the dumps, that nobody was paying attention to, that was led by tons of coaches in the past that complained about football being the dominant sport and that were bitter about it, and that bitterness reflected to the fan base. Bruce Pearl, as much as he had to coach when he first got hired at Tennessee, had to be a cheerleader for the program. He knew to be a cheerleader for the program and to tie it to the football program and the Lady Vols program and to embrace those things would help build the basketball program. So it was actually more important for him to cheerlead in those ways. The same with Tony Vitello and these other sports. It's not the same thing in football. It's just not particular. It wouldn't be the same thing in basketball. Now Tennessee's a basketball brand, but it's not the same thing in football where the brand is already there. You don't have to do that. And Bruce Pearl, and Josh Heupel needs to be focused 24/7 on recruiting. Game No Bueno goes, LOL, Heupel preparing for the hot seat in 2026. Maybe. David Speaks, you bring up a good point about the publicity. Maybe the public information director wants him there. That's possible. Maybe he's doing it for the school. Derek says maybe he's content with recruiting. That's fear for a lot of people. General Ursus says, I don't see how this is a problem. Heupel has met or exceeded expectations every year he's been here. He didn't meet my expectations of 2024, General Ursus, but fair enough. Derek, okay, Derek. All right, you got me. Caleb, you don't think Bill Belichick at UNC ain't taking breaks with his 20-year-old girlfriend? No more breaks than somebody is usually taking with a significant other. That's part of just the human living, I guess you could say. That's like saying you don't think they're eating breakfast. Like, of course they are. But again, drawing attention to yourself for going to games, I think is a little extra. You guys can call me crazy for that, but I do. I think it's a little extra. We'll talk about this more in a second. First, the show is brought to you by Double D Piping, fire protection contractors, providing around-the-clock service, protecting your customers' lives and properties all the time. DoubleDPiping.com.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Sticking back to it, our poll question. What are your thoughts on Josh Heupel cheering on Tennessee basketball? I'm in the minority again because 92% right now with 13 votes in are saying love it, 1 Tennessee. 8% are saying hate it. Focus on football. All right, guys. I'll go to the message board since you guys all apparently disagree with me. Name the national championship winning coach who drew attention to himself for heavily cheering on another sports team. Not being at the game, like Heupel was the College World Series last year. No, for heavily cheering on, for doing like something along the lines of Heupel with the cigar at that Tennessee-Alabama game. Name one. I can't. Name one who drew attention to themselves that way, the way Heupel has, the way Bruce Pearl did with what I'm talking about. By the way, I'd like to point out that we talk about Bruce Pearl, the cheerleader, and I just defended it. I would like to point out that Bruce Pearl's never won a national championship at this level. So, we could talk about it with that. Now, again, it doesn't count for basketball. It's not the same level of work as football. So name a football coach that has done it. David Speaks says Les Miles. Did Les Miles? David Speaks says Heupel took a job literally no one of relevance wanted back to national prominence. He still has a chip on his shoulder to prove till we win an SEC and national title. Okay, David, you say Les Miles. Did Les Miles notably cheer on a team at a basketball game? If he did, you got me. But also if he did, Dave, Les Miles is the most unnational championship caliber coach in national championship coach history. The dude won a national championship with 2 losses in the regular season because of the craziest year in college football in 2007. And also, he did it with a bunch of Nick Saban recruits. Derek, you're saying Urban and Florida basketball. Was Urban Meyer cheering at a Florida basketball game one time? I know this much. When Urban Meyer was out grinding on some lady at a bar, Jacksonville Jaguars, when he was coaching them, were absolutely collapsing as a program. So I'm not so sure if all of that is true. But if Urban Meyer was cheering at a Florida basketball game, and I mean legit, I don't mean just cheering. I mean doing things like Josh Heupel doing the cigar, or like Eli Drinkwitz last year talking trash to Tennessee's bench. Was he doing those things? If he was, maybe I'll change my mind. I'm not so sure he was, though. I think you guys might. And that's all I'm saying. Timothy McGee hops in and says, who gives a flack? Yeah, Derek says Brian Kelly and the Cajun accent at the game, but no natty. Yes, Derek, Brian Kelly, won no natty. Also, that was the typical where the coach goes to the basketball game. The football coach goes to a basketball game to introduce himself, and it was about to focus on the football program at halftime. And then he said, me and my family. But yeah, I remember that. But he was actually specifically focusing on the football program. So I'm not going to knock him for that. I'm saying, I think when coaches draw attention to themselves for being supportive of other sports in the program, they are honestly distracting from delivering results in the football program. And I say that with the football program. I think your job in football is to deliver results. Y'all can think I'm crazy. You can think I'm old school. You can think I'm absolutely ridiculous. But look, I haven't seen a coach be some crazy cheerleader on the sidelines of another sport that has actually won a national championship. And David Speaks says, I can attest as a Jags fan that Urban was a total train wreck who ruined Trevor Lawrence. He absolutely did ruin Trevor Lawrence. He absolutely did ruin Trevor Lawrence. I totally agree with you on that. Portions of the program are brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. I have dropped the link in the chat down below. When we come back, the College Football Playoff Committee, they have a new committee. And Tennessee baseball will be out here doing some crazy things stats-wise. We're going to talk about both of those things. A lot more to talk about. Stick with us. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by tscottjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Let's get to talking some college football playoff. The new college football playoff committee is out. 6 are out, 6 are in. What does this mean for the SEC and the Big Ten and the preference for the two conferences? Well, let's first look at who's leaving. Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk, former Wake Forest coach Jim Grobe, former Nebraska offensive lineman and NFL Hall of Famer Will Shields, former sports writer Kelly Whiteside. Their terms have expired. Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel, the committee chair, is gone. He will be replaced by Baylor Athletic Director Mac Rhodes, who was on the committee but is now taking over. And lastly, Gary Pinkel is being replaced. Former Missouri coach Gary Pinkel is actually being replaced by USA Today sports writer Steve Weiberg. That's not an official move, to be fair, but it's just one that is, it's kind of Missouri from former Missouri for former Missouri, because Steve Weiberg was on the committee from 2014 to 2017 and is a Missouri grad. The real story, though, is who steps in capacity with schools. Now, again, the Michigan athletic director is gone. The Navy athletic director is gone. Stepping in their place are former Michigan State coach Mark D'Antonio, current Maryland athletic director Damon Evans, former ESPN college football reporter Ivan Maisel, and Middle Tennessee State athletic director Chris Massaro, and former Ole Miss All-America tight end Wesley Walls, and as mentioned, Steve Weiberg to directly replace Gary Pinkel. Now, here is the good news. There's not much change in representation as far as the SEC goes. There's a Big Ten athletic director stepping in, and Maryland athletic director Damon Evans, and a Big Ten athletic director leaving in Ward Manuel. There's a Group of 5 athletic director stepping in, and MTSU AD Chris Massaro, and a Group of 5 athletic director leaving, and Navy athletic director Chad Gladchuk. What does this all mean? Well, the good news for this is that if you just take capacities, not much change. But if you take former coaches and the coaches they coached at, the ACC loses a little bit of influence, which is probably necessary for a lot of people, as former Wake Forest coach Jim Grobe is stepping down. And that's a good sign for Tennessee because the ACC did have outside influence. Also, now as far as graduates and alma maters, I can't go that far deep, guys. I don't think it matters as much. Like, I will say the SEC is getting a former player in there and tight end Wesley Walls, while the Big Ten is losing a former player in Will Shields, which is kind of a big deal. And that actually matters to a certain degree. I think all of this in the end is to say that bank on it, the new college football playoff committee is not going to fix any of the problems that were there with the old college football playoff committee last year. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC. Life made better. Schedule strength will have no more impact on this year's college football playoff than it did last year's college football playoff. Bank on it.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, welcome back. So yes, the take on the new playoff committee, it's not going to change anything. The issues that were there will still be there. Now, I want to address some things that were being said. Adam says Michigan should never be allowed another representative for as long as the NCAA exists. I get that with the cheating scandal. That's totally fair. But Adam, I want to address something you said real quick right here, which is that how do we go from non-biased person like Archie Manning to a guy employed by one of the participants? I agree. I have a problem with that too. I don't think athletic directors at schools should be allowed to be biased to a certain degree. But remember, Adam, the most represented conference with people in a capacity employed by a school is the ACC. That didn't stop them, and it was 2 years ago, and that didn't stop them from leaving Florida State out. Now, maybe the reason they left Florida State out is because they didn't like how Florida State was declaring open war on the ACC. But that's just what was happening then. General Ursus says the playoff committee should be disbanded, give the conference champs auto bids, and let a BCS-style system seed the field. General Ursus, I wouldn't hate that, but you got to have at-large bids if you're going to give all the conference champs auto bids. I mean, the second and third best team in the SEC get left out in favor of the champion of the Conference USA. I don't think you can allow that. But more importantly, you got to have non-conference games have some value. So look, I've given you guys my thoughts. I would love to go back to the old conferences where there were, I don't know, I believe 10, 12 conferences, maybe 10, 12 teams a conference. If you wanted a 16-team playoff, which I don't love, have all the conference champions get in automatically, and then just 4, 6, whatever at large bids, call it a day. That would make it a lot of fun. That would increase the value of all these regular season games and things like that. David Speak says they need to get rid of FCS opponents to keep the competition more open. Otherwise, we'll have Indiana and Boise State sinkers. Now, David, I actually don't think playing the FCS opponents is the problem because Tennessee and other schools in the SEC played FCS opponents, but Georgia played one and still had the most brutal schedule. The problem is the committee not valuing strength of schedule. But the other problem is that these gigantic conferences with no divisions creates a massive imbalance in scheduling, which is how Indiana last year can play the 8 worst teams in the Big Ten amidst the 9-game Big Ten schedule, which is what happened. That's a problem. And it's also a problem in the SEC too. Texas got in last year because they played the easiest SEC schedule possible. So look, there is no possible way to think that schedule strength will matter more next year. And that to me is a problem overall. So this current group has 5 former players and coaches, 6 sitting athletic directors, and 2 former sports writers. The ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, Conference USA, and Mid-American Conference are all represented in this. Now, returning committee members include Nevada Athletic Director Chris Alt, former Arizona State offensive lineman Randall McDaniel, former Oregon State and Nebraska coach Mike Riley, Miami Athletic Director David Saylor, Virginia Athletic Director Carla Williams, and Arkansas Athletic Director Hunter Yorachek. So Virginia's athletic director, Arkansas's athletic director, Maryland's athletic director are all members of the committee. That is the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC all have representation in this college football playoff committee with people currently employed by universities in those conferences. One of the flaws in that, though, and I get it, trying to give conferences equal representation, but one of the flaws of people employed by schools, let's be honest, guys, they could have agendas against other schools in that conference because it's a threat to them. You think Arkansas wants Texas A&M or Texas going to the college football playoff, not just because of the rivalry, but because of the competition and recruiting? No. And they don't care about the SEC revenue for that. They'd rather see Texas and Texas A&M suffer, because the more those schools are successful, the more they are hurt. That's a conflict of interest on its own, and I think it's a huge problem. So I don't think this is the best thing for them at all. I think it's going to have to be something that they really have to work out. There's obviously politicking going on, but I'll say that I don't think there's going to be a conference bias next year. I don't think there has been a conference bias, honestly, in the college football playoff. I think the problem has just been laziness when it comes to evaluating strength of schedule. And I don't think that's going to change with this new college football playoff committee. That's a poll question now. But I'm going to ask the CFP committee's biggest problem. The CFP's committee biggest problem is conflicts of interest, not valuing strength of schedule, or nothing, they're fine. And you guys let me know on that. I think it's not valuing strength of schedule. The lack of not valuing strength of schedule was a big issue last year. So General Ursa says he would have included at-large bids, should have included that in the comment. So he says he should have included that in the comment. He says he agreed that we need to go back to 10-team conferences. Yeah, General Ursa says, I agree with you. If I were the king of college football, here's what I would do. You ready for this? I would have a bunch of 10-team conferences, and every conference plays a round-robin schedule. There's no conference championship week. It's just an extra week of the regular season. Actually, I'd have 2 extra weeks of the regular season. I'd go into the second week of December. So every team plays 14 games, a 9-game round-robin non-conference schedule, and 9-game round-robin conference schedule, and 5 non-conference games. That's 14 games they all play. And then I would do a 16-team playoff, and the only reason I would do 16 teams then is because you would have roughly 10, 12 conferences, something like that. And, with all the at-large bids get in, and then 4 or whatever. All the conference champions get in, and then 4 or whatever at-large bids. And just have the straight playoff that way. That's how I would do it. It'd be a lot more fun. They'll never do that, but that's the best way I think they should do it. Maybe you could do 12-team conferences with 10 conferences, 120 teams in FBS, and you play a 14-game schedule. But I actually am a fan of the 14-game schedule. Another thing you could do is 10-team conferences, and that wouldn't work. I'm trying to think of the best way to set this up, but it's kind of a lot of things are playing in my head right now, and there's just different intriguing ways to do it that it can make it a lot more fun. But I'm not so sure. Look, my old way, if I were king of college football, I would have a bunch of 10-team conferences, go back to the old bowl tie-ins pre-BCS, and I mean pre-1998. Here's how I would do it. I would actually make it more fun. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know how much you guys disagree with me on this. I would have 10-team conferences, a 9-game round-robin conference schedule, a conference championship week, and then just the bowls. Just the bowls. And I would go back to the old bowl tie-ins pre-BCS. And then after you play all the bowls, then I would just pick the top 2 teams to play for a national championship game. Do a +1. You just make the bowls like the final week of the regular season, and then you can rank the top 2 teams afterwards. That's how I would do it. Timothy McGee talks about FCS as a better format. Adam says let Doge pick the playoff. Derek talks about Elon Musk and algorithm. for the BCS. Unsug says they'll have to reinstate divisions. I agree, they will. So look, I mean, Tennessee Smoky's right. Just do away with the bowl games. They do not fit really into the college scheme. Look, this is the hard part. This is the reason the playoff is not great. They're trying to split the baby between the bowl games and the playoff, and they can't coexist. And no one really wants to accept that fact. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, servicing Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, "Hey, Bo, Off the Hook sent you." That's right. Walk in and say, "Hey, Bo, Off the Hook sent you." When we come back, we're going to do a little This Day in Tennessee history. We're going to talk a little baseball. And baseball setting some record, guys. Just worth knowing. The show brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Stick with us. Gonna talk some news on the diamond in 2 minutes.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun, coming to you live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Portions of the program are brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. It is time for This Day in Tennessee sports history, and it's actually a good one. It's a real good one, and it's one of the most historical years in Tennessee basketball history, and so it's definitely worth talking about because it's one that kind of lives in lore, honestly. So before we get there, This Day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates on facebook.com/sports treasures TN, facebook.com/sports treasures TN. On this day in Tennessee Vols history, the men's Tennessee basketball program, led by Reindeers in the midst of the Ernie and Bernie show, shocked second-ranked Kentucky. This was 48 years ago. Shocked second-ranked Kentucky at home, 81-79. That was the second to last game of the season. They closed out the season with a 65-55 win over Vanderbilt. With that win, Tennessee was able to clinch a share after beating Vanderbilt of the SEC regular season title, which they clinched with Kentucky. And because they swept Kentucky that year, they actually won it outright. So Tennessee beat Kentucky 81-79 at home. It was the Ernie and Bernie show. They won the SEC regular season title, and it was Ray Mears' final year as head coach of Tennessee, a legendary moment. This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Work Trucks. They're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. worktrucksllc.com with an X. Why risk chancing your future and business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks will also work to make sure you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find the perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. worktrucksllc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. All right. We're going to close with a little bit of baseball talk. We don't talk about it much, but Tennessee baseball, guys, in case you haven't noticed, is on a roll. They are defending their national championship in a big way. So, over the weekend at the Arizona Foundation College Classic in Houston, Texas, Tennessee scored 2 ranked wins. They beat Oklahoma State on Friday, 5-2, and then they beat Arizona on Monday, 5-1. Oklahoma State was 16th, and Arizona was 24th. And then on Tuesday, last night, they hosted Radford, a game they were supposed to win. But boy, did they not just win it. Okay, they won it by creating history. This Tennessee baseball program had 3 grand slams on the night. 3. 2 in the same inning. Yes, I'm not kidding. They beat Radford 22-9 off a run roll, despite falling behind 3-0 in the first inning. And they fell behind 3-0 in the first inning. They ended up with 3 grand slams. It started in the bottom of the third, trailing Radford 4-2. You had Reese Chapman homer, driving in 4 runs to give Tennessee a 6-4 lead. Then in the 7th inning, Tennessee was only up 12-9, and Andrew Fisher hit a grand slam, which gave them a 16-9 lead. Excuse me, no. Entering the 7th inning, they were only up 11-9. And then on a walk with the bases loaded, Hunter Inslee walked with the bases loaded. That sent 1 run in. And on the very next at bat, Andrew Fisher hit a grand slam. 2 more runs scored with 2 more base hits, including a triple and then a walk. And then finally, the game ended on a run roll after Blake Grimmer, coming in and pinch hitting for Hunter Inslee, hit a home run to give Tennessee a 22-9 win. This Tennessee baseball team is now back at number 1 in many of the polls. Not unanimous, but they are back at number 1 in many of the polls. And they are absolutely lapping the field in everything. They lead the nation in home runs with 36. on the night. They are third in the nation in runs with 150. But spoiler alert, that's in 12 games. They would be, I believe, tied for second. I'm sorry, they'd be second to VMI if it was runs per game. They're absolutely dominating in every facet, and their pitching is still elite. They're fourth right now in ERA at 2.16. Is Tony Vitello delivering an encore that we didn't think possible? I thought after finally delivering a national championship for Tennessee baseball, Tony Vitello might even entertain the Arkansas job, and Tennessee baseball fans and Tennessee athletic fans in general will just kind of rest, be like, you know what? We got a national championship in another sport. Chalk that one up. But the excitement is still there, and it's not going anywhere. Is Tennessee baseball now, is this Tennessee baseball team more exciting than last year's team was? I mean, they're certainly looking like it. This Tennessee baseball program is absolutely incredible. So I guess an honest question, is this Tennessee baseball program better than last year's baseball program was? I didn't think that possible. Honestly, I thought last year's baseball program, they should have been the favorite to win the national title from the start, and they were. They got 60 wins. I think, didn't they enter as the number 1 overall seed in the tournament? I believe they did. They just went on a roll the whole time. I want to set that up as a poll question. And for the first, the CFP committee's biggest problem is conflicts of interest, not valuing strength of schedule. Nothing they're fine. 71% say not valuing strength of schedule. I'm going to set up the poll question. Is this Tennessee baseball team better than last year? First, portions of the program are brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
Welcome back to the program. Again, we're asking the question, is this year's Tennessee baseball team better than last year's Tennessee baseball team? Offensively, they look like they could be. I'll just say that. I don't think they hit 3 grand slams in a game last year. Now, last year's Tennessee baseball team did have a sweep of Illinois in a series in which they scored 24 runs one time. So, I mean, they were really, really, really good, but this one is just rolling through the field at this point, and they're just absolutely cleaning house with everybody. And again, an 11-run 7th inning with 2 grand slams for a midweek game. I mean, that's just absolutely insane for a program that actually in Radford put up a decent fight. I don't know. You guys tell me, is this year's Tennessee baseball team better than last year's? It's debatable. It's probably too early to tell, but they already have 2 top 25 wins. So you can't ignore the fact that they've already produced to a certain degree. Now, last year's team opened the year with the top 25 win, beating number 18/21 Texas Tech 6-2, and then they beat Oklahoma and Baylor. They had a more impressive start in terms of schedule strength to the season, but that doesn't mean that this one has not been good. And we're talking, again, the Oklahoma State and Arizona wins were impressive, and they've just been blowing everybody out. This team scored, the real story, this team scored 29 runs in 7 innings against UNC Asheville back in mid-February. It was their 4th game of the year. So they scored 29 runs, and then they just scored 22 runs over Radford. Now, they haven't done it against a major opponent yet, but I mean, this team is absolutely insane in what they're doing so far. So that's the poll question. Is this Tennessee baseball team better than last year? With only 5 votes in, 60% say yes, 40% say no. The baseball team is back in action. The win over Radford was the first of a back-to-back midweek games in the night between Radford Tuesday and Xavier on Wednesday. And then this weekend, they're at Lindsey Nelson Stadium to take on St. Bonaventure. And before West Georgia, they face them next Tuesday. And a week from Friday, they begin SEC play at home against the Florida Gators. Excuse me. So still a lot of Still a lot of ball before SEC play hits. A lot of questions about this team. Daniel Maddox says, I honestly think this is Tony's best lineup yet, and he's had some dandies smashing their own records. I agree. David Speak says, we won't even see Osunda this year since he's ineligible. That's a good point. I mean, Osunda's ineligible, and they're looking insane. Gavin Killian was a single away from running the cycle over this past weekend. Great point, Unsung. So, I mean, this is really, really, really impressive. And Unsung says Liam Doyle's a monster of a pitcher. Yep. So I think that we'll have to see. We can't declare it yet better than last year's basketball team, but they certainly look really, really, really good. Portions of the program are brought to you by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. It's at 10629 Hardin-Valley. I'm sorry, it's at 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Looking at the poll question one more time. Is this year's Tennessee baseball team better than last year? 67% of you now say yes. 33% say no. Now, we'll have to see how SEC play goes. We saw from Josh Heupel in football. It's very easy to run up the score against lesser teams. Can they do it when they begin SEC play? That's going to be the debate. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Thank you guys all for tuning into the show today. Hit that like and subscribe button. We're building something great here at Off the Hook, and we want you to be a friend, be a part of it. Tell a friend, ring the bell, turn your notifications on, all that good stuff, guys. Again, what we're doing here is really, really exciting. Bit of a downtime right now because football season's over, but it's picking back up for March Madness, and you don't want to miss our coverage. We give you the best coverage in town here at Off the Hook Sports and the best coverage in the nation. So again, please hit that like and subscribe button. Once again, the show brought to you by Banks & Jones with Caleb Calhoun. Thank you guys all for tuning in. You'll have a great rest of your day. I'll be back on tomorrow. We're on every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook